I figured The Long Walk was going to be a mixture of The Hobbit, Forrest Gump's cross-country run, and The Hunger Games, which sounded extremely dull and mundane. But does this hold more than a simple last man standing type of story? In the near future, where America has become a police state, a group of boys is selected to enter an annual contest where the winner will be awarded a massive prize. The game is simple. Maintain a steady walking pace without stopping, and the contest ends when only one remains. So this is an adaptation of Stephen King's first book, but some key details have been changed or omitted just to make it more effective as a film. And while I wasn't terribly excited to see this movie, I did get more enthused when I found out that J.T. Molnar, who wrote and directed the twisty thriller Strange Darling, wrote the screenplay. And then Francis Lawrence was the director. Now he's the dude who helmed the last chunk of the Hunger Games movies. Now for the writing of this, the script, it's condensed in ways that allow this to be more efficient and less tangential, which King is often guilty of more often than not. Now here, character development is sparse, revealing pertinent details about the characters only when it's necessary for connection and narrative enhancement. And because the premise is just extremely simple and very direct, the character development that we do receive needs to be as impactful as possible to endear us to certain characters while maintaining a growing tension. This stars Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson, Garrett Werning, Tut Nyut, Charlie Plummer, Ben Wang, Joshua Odjick, and Mark Hamill. Now, Cooper Hoffman, he's a relative newcomer to acting, but certainly he holds his own as one of the main protagonists. Now, for this adaptation, he's a bit secretive, but also hopefully jaded. He works as a great everyman, too, not standing out in just any particular way. He's just kind of some rando who's idealistic without being naive. And because he's just an average guy, he comes across as very relatable. No special athletic prowess, no high intelligence, just charismatic and personable. And this makes him easy to connect with, and he gets the opportunity to deliver some moving monologues. Now, David Johnson might be one of the more recognizable actors as he stole the show in Alien Romulus. Now, he's our other main protagonist, bringing positivity and encouragement in a contest that's pretty much devoid of any true joy. And Johnson's passion creates this character who is instantly endearing, not only because of his optimism, but because of the way that he lifts up so many others around him. Now, for a storyline that doesn't seem like friendships would or even should develop, because, I mean, come on, it's a last man standing sort of competition, Johnson's Pete is somebody that you'd certainly want at your side. He comes across as selfless, and not just out of a pragmatic, scheming type of way. Instead, creating these believable bonds where he'll take risks for those he becomes close with. With Mark Hamill as the major, the one in charge of the walk, and also the one who came up with it, he is the perfect, menacing, yet generic villain. There's pretty much zero depth to the character, other than he's cruel. He's a prime example of the establishment. He represents way more than just the singular military figurehead. He's the embodiment of what the world has become, and what perpetuates the movie's current culture of inhumanity masquerading as leadership. Now, the major barks hollow platitudes, and Hamill's cold delivery adds a level of meanness that just works to encouragingly undermine any hope that the walkers begin to have. While the film doesn't give a specific time the story takes place in, the aesthetics make it appear like the mid-60s. But what makes the lack of specificity work so well is that the story becomes timeless. We're told at the very start that there was a great war that divided the nation. And while it does create some context, it's also vague enough to be applicable to any time period. The visuals are lonely, desolate, almost hopeless, but then they also contain a ton of beauty, creating this powerful contrast between the harsh savagery of the walk and then the serenity of these green flowing hills, marred only occasionally by a downtrodden person or maybe two who just happen to stand by the road to spectate. And then there's the barbarity of the competition itself. One prize from a large group of volunteers, which I do think is why Lawrence was the perfect choice to direct. I mean, he can make this world feel similar to the Hunger Games without having to copy ideas and methods that he has used in those films. The idea of survival of the fittest is loud and clear, but it's executed without all the complexities of games or internal schemings of factions. The rules of the walk keep the contest very streamlined. And as I mentioned right at the start, it seems like this would be a very mundane and lackluster story to watch play out. But the dialogue creates some riveting tension. And you could almost compare this movie to a stage play. The walking is constant, so that isn't terribly dynamic until somebody suffers some sort of malady or maybe a breakdown. Then it is fantastically vicious. But what really drives the narrative are the discussions between the characters. Not only is this where we get the background development when it's necessary, but this is also what works to create the anxiety and suspense. The words carry a lot of meaning, well beyond just the current experience of trudging on endlessly. There's this layered social commentary taking place within the storytelling, and I found the dialogue to be brilliant and compelling. Near the beginning of the movie, Hoffman's Ray says a simple line of dialogue that could be seen as just an ordinary throwaway line. But the weight of what he's describing by saying, "That's what I'm afraid of," goes well beyond the moment. It's a poignant message that's widely relevant and also works to give us insight into his character. Sometimes there are rah-rah moments within the monologues, and even those carry a deeper meaning than just the surface-level discussion, showcasing a camaraderie and brotherhood that transcends the current situation. Now, one thing that bothered me during some of this was the lack of clarity within certain portions of dialogue. Now, I don't know if it was just the audio mix of the theater that I was in, or if the words just weren't captured by the microphone as well as they should have been. I was struggling to hear some of the conversations, but not consistently. I mean, most of the time I could clearly make out what every character was saying, but when they would drop their tone, or maybe not enunciate distinctly, it was a crapshoot at what they were saying. And even at the beginning, we hear some of the characters' names said out loud, and Johnson's Pete, that was one that I didn't catch until later when it was repeated loudly. There are also a few conveniences that are inserted into the story. I mean, they're not blatant, but certain elements, they kind of become unbelievable, outside of these young men just being able to walk over 300 miles without stopping. I mean, for example, a character loses their shoe and then continues on for many, many miles more. Now, I could buy this if they were from a culture that was typically barefoot, but that's not the case. So their already bloodied feet, they would have become shredded in a short distance due to the asphalt, debris, and even just the moisture that they encounter. I mean, does this ruin the immersion in the storytelling? I don't think so, but it was something that niggled my brain for a while, allowing certain characters just to progress farther than they probably should. I was on the edge of my seat thanks to the way that this is edited. We aren't shown every minute of every mile that the guys are walking, thankfully. I mean, that would just be so dull. But we do get enough time on the journey to feel the tiredness of the walkers, and then to feel the impending peril that 99% of them are going to face. I mean, it's kind of like watching the Titanic. We all know the boat is going to sink, right? Well, I guess that's a spoiler if you haven't seen it, but anyway, that doesn't take away from the drama. Here, we're told that there will be only one winner, meaning everybody else is going to die. Knowing the outcome of the majority, that's not the suspenseful portion. It's the tenacity and exhaustion that creates the tension. There are a few times when things get incredibly hairy, and during these, I was fidgeting in my seat in worried anticipation. And then to add to my own anxiety, the characters' reactions to what happens to the other competitors, that works to build even more nervousness. Many times they cover their ears, they just squeeze their eyes shut, and then attempt to drown out any of the screaming or the violence. They're trying to escape the trauma of what could, and most likely is going to, happen to them. The expressions of terror and disgust, they're palpable and effective, almost giving us the permission to feel the exact same way, all the while inviting us in as the spectators to this grisly contest, just like those who would be watching the thing play out live on their TV sets. I mean, if we acknowledge that we're culpable in their demise because we're watching this as a form of entertainment, it can change the perception of the story, moving from something escapist to something more cautionary. Overall, I found The Long Walk to be profound and haunting. Despite a simple context, the performances, dialogue, and screenplay all work together to craft a movie that's going to stick with you and maybe trouble you for days after. There are times when the clarity of the dialogue isn't maintained, making it difficult to decipher conversations, but it's not a consistent issue, even though it's somewhat annoying. And despite some plot conveniences that give certain characters more protection or advantages than they should have, there is still anxious and urgent pacing, as well as settings that contrast with the barbarity of the visuals. The messaging is wonderfully poignant and timeless, thankfully without becoming a sermon. I was surprised at how deeply this hooked me. While the source material meanders, as most King's works do, this is tight and efficiently produced to maximize the dread and minimize the unnecessary offshoots. There's no sex, some nudity, a ton of profanity, and then a bunch of violence. I give The Long Walk 4.5 out of 5 couches. I'm really caught off guard at how much that this has stuck with me. Now, I hope you enjoy it just as much as I did. Okay, what are some dialogue-driven movies that have captivated you? I would love to hear about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.